Filters are a great way to really change up your image, make them a lot more stylized and maybe more dramatic. So we're going to explore several different filters that we can use in Photoshop. Here we go. Well, in the filter menu, we have many different options in here. There's some showcase filters. You can even access the filter that was just used with the Control F command. And then you can access lots of different options with your filters as well, including the filter gallery, which lets you go through them. Well, one of the filters that has been enhanced quite a bit in this new version is in the render, and it's called lighting effects. And you can use this to create spotlights. Now, this lighting effect's been around for a while, but it's a lot more feedback that you get now that the Photoshop CS6 tool has been improved. And I can start making some changes right here on the fly, and I can see my results as I'm moving. I can see it in the window. So it's a lot easier to work with it. And I'm just pulling these different areas to make changes. Now what I'm creating is a lighting effect based on a spotlight, and it says spot in here. You could actually do something with some other options. So point is going to look a little bit more like a bulb, like a light bulb, and so it's going to have a bright light, and then you have infinite, which gives you light all over. Of course, the most dramatic is that spotlight feature, and I can pull some information up and just bring it. Oops, I got a little carried away there. Let me go ahead and zoom out a little bit smaller so that I can get to that handle point that got so out. I just did my Control minus so I can move the whole thing. Sometimes it does that there where it's hard to move the whole thing. There we go. Then I'll do a Control 0 and position it. Anyway, as I set those up, and I also have a gadget in the middle, a widget in the middle I can use for changing the intensity of that light. So I find it very intuitive. Even though I can come here and use the sliders to move it around, I just like adjusting it, getting right in the middle of it and mix. Then I can click on OK. And when I click on OK, I want you to be aware that it actually changed the pixels. And these filters are all destructive in the sense that once you apply them, you can't go back and reapply them or make changes. We could use our undo command, which I'll use right now. So it's a really good idea to either be working on a separate layer, a new layer right here, or to make a duplicate. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a duplicate of this background layer, and then that way I can always go back and get the options. In addition to the lighting effects, we also have an option called lens flare. I click on lens flare, and I can position this wherever I want, and it's going to simulate those flashes that we had from different options. Now I could also do the lens flare, watch this here, on a completely separate transparent layer, and I'll go here and do my lens flare, render. I can also just do Control F and it'll reapply it for me. Oh, let's try that one more time. It's telling me that because it's empty, it's not going to let me do that. So you get this idea with the lens flare, and it's going to simulate the fact that you had a camera take that image as opposed to some digital processing. Now, let's try some other options in here. I'm going to go to the clownfish. I like this one because of the intensity of colors. And when I look at the filters, there's so many different filters that sometimes it can be overwhelming. So that's what I like about the filter gallery, is it allows me to try some elements right on the fly. Now, I'm noticing the colors here that I'm using are black and white. And a lot of the filters that you work with are actually going to pick up the colors in your foreground and background. So one of the things that you may want to do is pick some colors that you want to use. I can even use my eyedropper here and just pick up a purple and switch that and pick up an orange, for example. And you can switch those back and forth. Also to be aware of is just the color mode that you're in. We're in RGB, and a lot of your images will be in RGB. You're going to get the most options with your filters in this color mode. And so some of the color modes won't be available to you, or some of the filters, I should say, won't be available to you depending on the color mode that you're in. So let's go back to our filter gallery, and you can see some different results based on those foreground and background colors. Now we have some options in here. Here's artistic, And even with something like the cutout, you can actually change some of the settings, and I can zoom out, change some of those settings, and get different results. I always like the plastic wrap. It seems kind of scary but funny. And we've got some different options in here for brush strokes and ink outlines. And depending on the resolution and the colors and the composition, you're going to get some different results. But it's a great way to create some interesting features. I'm going to go ahead and click on OK, and it creates those results. And again, you can see how it changed that background permanently because these filters are permanent changes. Okay. Now, the other thing I like to do with filters is I like to layer them back on top of layers. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this into a black and white image. Because filters use the black and white, you can get some really intense effects with that. So here's my black and white image. I used a couple of options, the black and white layer adjustment and the curves adjustment to not only gray out the colors, but then also make them pop out a little bit more. I'm going to make a copy of this, and I actually want this entire image to be black and white, not just have these adjustment images on them. So I'm going to select these different items, these layers and adjustment layers, and in my layer menu, I'm going to merge the layers, and so now I have black and white pixels, but I still have my original background. I'm also going to make a copy of this. Because those filters are destructive, it allows me to go back and return to this state at a later time. And then I'm going to try some different filters out. How about resetting these colors using my reset sample and then picking out maybe a yellow color in here and going into the filters, and we'll go to the filter gallery, and we can try something with, that's a little too much, the stylized. Try something with our sketch and photocopy. Go ahead and you can see it has that yellow and white because those are the colors that I used. I'll click on OK. That's pretty intense right there, but what I can do is actually apply that as a blending mode, and it's going to blend back in with the colors behind it. And you can then create some different effects. Hard light, try something like difference, and create some interesting effects in there. Just one more, I'll go back into curves in here. I'll make a copy of that layer and apply a filter. This time we'll do something like a dark blue. And we'll go back into our filters and go back to the gallery so we can explore the different options in here. And we'll choose a stained glass option. Maybe go ahead and Control minus to move it down. That's a really interesting effect now, isn't it? Click on OK. And again, I can use a blending mode. How about color burn, or perhaps something like vivid light? And you can just create some different effects. You could even go back and add that yellow, and again, the stacking order makes a difference. So choosing some of the filters like the lighting effects or the lens flare, or perhaps some of the more dramatic artistic and style and texture filters, and then combining them with other layers, blending them together, you can create some really dramatic stylized imagery.